So certainly every war game has unique community language on there. You're watching YouTube videos, you're reading forums and blogs, and you'll hear things like an initiative sync, or in this case, a zombie mech. What does that mean? What are we talking about? And tactically, how do we utilize that on the table? That's what we're going to look at in this podcast, and we're going to explore it from a variety of mechs to see what we can do and why tactically certain zombie mechs make the mech that more dangerous and that more potent. So in Battletech, there's a variety of weapon locations. Most of the weapons are in the torso because you have the most internals on there that can support it. A lot of weapons are in the arms. It makes sense not only for aiming, but also interaction. A couple of mechs will have them in the rear torso, one or two in the head. And I'm going to test the Battletech community knowledge here. No cheating. No pausing this and Googling elsewhere. I can only think of one, honestly. Mechs that have weapons in their legs. And I'm not talking about like Death from Above, jump jet type stuff. I'm talking like actual stuff in their legs. As far as I can remember, the Crusader, it's got what, the 2 LRM 5-packs in each leg, which that's an interesting machine to pilot in itself because you're popping off those missile shots from the legs, but then that means you can't make physical attacks kicking. So you have to know, like, when to shoot and when to not, because if your opponent closes and gets base to base and they're going to start kicking and punching you, I might as well be punching and kicking back. You can't do that, obviously, if you're firing weapons. So there's this idea that as a mech takes damage, the arms are, generally speaking, I'd say in 90% cases, the most vulnerable, the first to go, because they have the least amount of armor. And on the damage chart, they tend to get exposed a lot if you're head-on or on one of the sides. So if you're head-on to me, you can easily hit my right arm. If you're on my right side, that's also going to increase the chances of hitting my right arm on there. Obviously, on the left, it's going to be the left. So usually the arms are the first to go. It gets blown off. And that's the excitement of Battletech. When a limb gets blown off and your mech starts taking damage, when do you run? When do you keep pushing it? And what are we doing? Anything can happen in Battletech. You get that arm blown off. You can't make physical attacks. It's in the space as a battle club. We have to kind of remember that. You can pick it up. You lose any weapons on there. A zombie mech is a mech that can get both of its arms blown off and still have dedicated weapon systems in the fight. This makes it, an example would be like the Battlemaster, not as a zombie mech, but as a mech that is limited by this. You've got the PPC in the arm. It gets blown off, you don't have that PPC. And at range, that's one of the focuses at it. If we look at the Warhammer, we looked at the Warhammer. If we look at the Marauder, I love the Marauder. Actually, Marauder's a better example. You lose those arms, you lose those PPCs. You lose a lot. You lose the lasers, you lose everything in there. So that's an example of arms taking damage, you're in trouble. A great zombie mech, an amazing zombie mech, would be the Awesome. It's an awesome mech. The Awesome has the Battle Fist. It's got the PPC in the other arm, but in the left and right torso, it has those two other PPCs. So think about the massive, and this is one of the reasons why the Awesome is such a great mech. You're looking and you're saying all it has is the 3 PPCs. And it's got the head laser, which you always forget about, or at least I always forget about on there. If you're firing that small head laser, things have kind of gone wrong, but we will be firing that as best we can. But what keeps that Awesome going is the fact not only do you have tons of armor, you don't have ammo limitations, so you don't have to worry about that. You can push the heat a little bit more because you don't have to worry about ammo cooking off. You don't have to worry about critical hits on there, so you're not going to get taken out by a crit ammo explosion. But also it's a zombie mech. So if you blow off the arms, it still has 2 PPCs in there. So this idea of a zombie mech is something that just keeps going and going and going and going without the majority of its weapon systems being impacted on there. When you combine a zombie mech with an energy mech, that makes the effectiveness that much more powerful. And these groups of mechs that have this attribute of being a zombie mech and an energy mech, barring a lucky shot, And, lucky shot in Battletech happens all the time. Headshot, double torso crit, explosion, 3 spots, 3 engine hits. It can happen. It will happen at some point. The game will pause. You'll look and say, like, what the heck just happened? But barring that Murphy's Law, fog of war, dogs of war type stuff, you have to plan on that mech that you're facing. If it's a zombie energy mech, you need to sink significant resources into downing that mech. And I find often one has to be hyper aggressive to do that. As in, like, I got to run up there and start punching and kicking you and smashing your mech's head in, because it's just not, it's going to take a lot to go down. And while I'm shooting into that mech, even if I can suppress that mech, it's going to absorb that damage. You've got other machines, you've got other vehicles, you've got other infantry running around, essentially uncontested on there. That makes it all the more challenging. So that's the definition, zombie mech in Battletech.